Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Wednesday, October 28th. No, 22nd. Sorry. It's 10:08. October 22nd, 2025. And Elizabeth May is a lawyer. Don't ask ChatGPT questions while you're doing your show. It can't produce for you. It can't be that Roz in the booth, right? From Frasier. You can't be like, Roz, look up if Elizabeth May is a lawyer, right? Because it'll lie to you. And so thank you to everybody who told me that I responded and reacted to a lying ChatGPT. So Grok was the one. Somebody sent me a Grok thing saying, yeah, she's a lawyer, dude. And so, yeah, and I even presented ChatGPT with proof that she was a lawyer. And ChatGPT said, no, she's lying. And I was like, what? Okay. So don't believe ChatGPT and Elizabeth May is a lawyer. It still was phrased funny. I went to law school. She could have said, I'm a lawyer, right? And so I would know. Anyway, regardless, moving on. I like to correct my errors. So I made an error yesterday and please forgive me. Housing is not going to be balanced until 2035. 2035 to get the affordability back in housing. That's a decade. That is absolutely unacceptable. That is not a plan. That's kicking the can down the road and not doing your job, for crying out loud. While they increase immigration and increase incentives for people to immigrate to Canada, they're not fixing the housing and they have no plans to for another 10 years. So that's not good. I don't think that's not a good thing. C2 is being rewritten, and will C8 and C9 meet the same fate? I hope so, or we're going to an election. It doesn't sound like anybody's going to be supporting this budget. Never interviewed Justin Trudeau. The police, the RCMP, never interviewed Justin Trudeau over SNC Lavalin, and they're quite matter of fact about it. It's actually quite an interesting back and forth. It's 5 minutes with Larry Brock. We'll only listen to a couple of choice pieces, but it is worth your time to listen to the whole thing. GM plant closure is a big deal to the Liberals. They're trying their best to vilify GM while begging GM to stay. Please stay, but they're so bad, and we're going to sue them, says Doug Ford. So it's going to be interesting because they can't thread that needle. They can't walk that razor's edge, right? It's not going to work. They're going to alienate GM. The financial supports that they're planning on top of all of this aren't going to work, aren't going to last long enough. It's going to be a disaster. It already is. Their plan is failing. They need to get on board with another plan, but they're not creative and they're ideologically captured. So we're not going to get on board with another plan. We're riding this thing like it's gold in the 1970s from $800 all the way down to $200 because you believe it's going to bounce back. And my gosh, there's no bounce coming, man. Couch surfing military members, and we got to talk about housing. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, I've got a massive grab bag of governance. I was going to start talking about Trump declaring Antifa terrorist organization, domestic terrorism, and now that's going to have an entirely whole of government response, I guess, and that's different than has been before. So Antifa is going to be under pressure, and he said that they're going to go after the funding. They're going to go after the people who are funding this thing. They're not going to go after necessarily the ground troops, the foot soldiers. They've mapped them all out. They know who they are. So they're going to go after the heads of this thing. And so that's interesting to note as well. And Ireland popped off big time yesterday, and I was going to start with that too, but I thought, man, this is a Canadian news show, so we got to stay really tight with Canada. So we're going to start with grab bag of governance. And gov.exe starts us off, and he says, actually, it is gov.exe, but it's a different tweet. He says, if I wanted to destroy a country, I'd probably start by using government-controlled media and educational systems to demoralize the population. Check. Then I'd destabilize the economy by burying it in debt. Check. Expanding the size and power of government. Check. And importing millions from the third world. Check. Then I'd destroy trade relations and push the country into a crisis. Right. And then the IMF can come in and save the day. And, but you've got to maintain control of the government. And so they're reframing. This budget is in lots of trouble. Nobody wants to vote for it. The Conservatives are out. The Bloc has all but said, we're out. We're not going to vote for this thing. And so is it going to be the NDP saving the day for the Liberals again? Here is Steve McKinnon talking about how tenuous this budget seems. Here we go.
2 weeks from the budget. I think that what I'm seeing in Parliament worries me. The Bloc Québécois, who, without having even read the budget, eliminate the possibility that they will support it, and the Conservatives making just ludicrous demands with respect to the budget.
It sounds like you're worried about maybe Canada going to another election. Is that a realistic possibility Canadians should expect?
We have a minority government, but we believe we have a mandate. And when I see opposition parties not ruling out the possibility of voting for the budget, that's starting to worry me, but I think it's them that are misreading the mood of Canadians. If an election is necessary, we would obviously, reluctantly, because we don't think Canadians want an election, but election there will be. It's the opposition parties who have that decision in their hands.
They've made a mandate up in their heads. They don't have a mandate. A mandate is a majority government. They don't have a mandate. They believe that because the people who oppose the Conservatives make up more than a majority government in the House of Commons, they count the Bloc, they count the NDP, they count the Greens. They say all of these people, that's a healthy majority. And so they think that they have a mandate because they look at all of these parties and they say, we are all aligned on the left, and so we have a mandate. They don't have a mandate. They don't have a mandate. They don't have a mandate to do what they're doing. They don't have a mandate to be as opaque as they are, as like the transparency doesn't exist. There is no accountability for anything that anybody does, right? They're going to rebrand government spending as investment. And you can't do that. That's not how it works. I'm going to rebrand this dinner out as an investment. And so bring on the bottles of, whatever it is that people drink at expensive dinners, right? Like, it's absolutely crazy. And you can't do that and be taken seriously by the ratings institutions and all of these things that we've said validate the system that we're in, right? And the system's not valid, but all of the people who've created these guardrails and safety things and, checks and balances and stuff, they say, oh yeah, the system's totally valid. And then when the government blows right through them and people say, economic fiscal anchors, what are those? This system doesn't need fiscal anchors. Fiscal anchors are so 2020, right? Like, who needs fiscal anchors? Guardrails, psh, right? And so we get what's happening now. And so does anybody care about the perceived system integrity? It doesn't seem so. They say it's good, so it's good, right? Oh yeah, those Conservatives, those people are making me worried because they're not going to vote for the budget. They shouldn't have voted for the throne speech on division. They shouldn't have voted for C5. They shouldn't have done anything at all since the election of Mark Carney. However, here we are. They should have been fighting and instructing Canadians how to fight, but instead we get another election from Poilievre and tired rhetoric. Adams says in 35 years, this is a US map, but I think this is informative in Canada. I think our map flipped from manufacturing to government jobs and healthcare jobs, not just healthcare jobs, government jobs, because in the United States, it's easy to get healthcare jobs. The government jobs are a little bit more sticky. I think it's harder to grow government in a place like the United States, whereas in Canada, people love big government. They're like, oh, you got a government job? That's great, right? And nope. So in 35 years in the United States, we flipped the US map from manufacturing being the largest employer in most states to healthcare being the largest employer. Absolute shit trade. We need to flip the map back. Yeah, well, we've offshored all of the manufacturing and all of that technology. We're now 30 years, 40, 50 years behind because we started in the 1970s. And so the 1970s manufacturing, we haven't modernized, right? There's still not a modern, we're not able to manufacture in a modern way at scale like China can. And that would take probably 10 years of IP theft, maybe, right? Of building factories the way China builds factories in the West. And so, interesting, right? And I'm not a manufacturing expert, so Amazon is modernizing shipping with robots and all sorts of other stuff. So there are places that are more modern than your run-of-the-mill manufacturing plant. Like there's tool and die, and like there's small manufacturing, there's food manufacturing in Canada. So there is some manufacturing, but at the same time, when you're talking like auto manufacturing, right? But when you're talking like what China's putting out and the cost of their goods, and then you compare to the manufacturing in Ontario and the cost of our goods, there's a big discrepancy. And part of that is technology. Part of that is supply chain size. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. But I feel like because of what we did in the 70s and because of the fractured nature of the manufacturing in Ontario and more broadly the West, we're not going to be as up to speed on manufacturing the stuff that China's manufacturing, like phones, computers, keyboards, all this stuff. Like, as far as I understand it, we don't do that en masse here. We import that stuff. And so we don't have the expertise to do that stuff, right? So that's a problem. And the problem shines, Trump has been talking about this with chips, right? All of the things that people buy now have chips in them, and we don't make the chips here. And that's just one example of our manufacturing not modernizing. So we can build some things here, sure, food and stuff, but the stuff that's really important to drive our society forward, we're not building that here. Not by and large, right? And nobody's interested in even talking about that problem. Now, that's interesting to me. Here is Mark Carney talking about jobs. Mark Carney says Canadians are taking charge of our future. I don't think so. This is liberal spin. Dan Albus is responding to this, and he says, even after a confidential report was leaked that shows much of the BC ferries work could have been done here in Canada, you are still supporting sending $1 billion to China to build BC ferries. There's no resiliency in offshoring jobs to China. You, sir, are all talk. Yeah, all talk. And Carney never says anything true. All of the things he says are calculated lies, just like Trudeau.
This budget is generational. This will help define this country, the scale of investment to create hundreds of thousands of high-paying, high-skilled jobs for people who are listening to this program. If you're young and you want to go into the skilled trades, with our budget, we are going to create those jobs. But also to create a much stronger economy so that we can't be sideswiped by decisions south of the border, and that we are in control of our own destiny. And that is truly turning the corner. And that's not just turning the corner, if I can keep the metaphor, it's driving where we want to go. And that's what we're going to deliver.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a good idea ignoring the geography and the history and pivoting to Asia, China, where the shipping is prohibitive. The rumor is that Canada was willing to, and maybe even did, sign on to the UN carbon tax deal and the shipping thing. And I don't know if it actually has any effect. I think Trump squashed it, but Canada was on board. So I'm not surprised, because we are, again, ideologically captured by climate zealots. National Newswatch says in a scathing report, the AG finds the Canada Revenue Agency call centers are slow to answer and often inaccurate. In test calls, CRA agents gave accurate answers only 17% of the time when asked about individual taxes. So people are saying, do not let these people auto-file our taxes. So the CRA, Franco Tetrazzino, he says, the CRA doesn't know how to pick up the phone. The CRA doesn't know how to give out correct information. Yet Carney thinks the CRA can file people's taxes. No automatic tax filing. Yeah, because you're going to get screwed. They're going to say, you made $170,000. And you're going to say, what? No, I didn't. And then you're going to get taxed on that $170,000, and then maybe taxed 3 years running on $170,000 that you didn't make, right? That you were like, I didn't make that. That's not how much money I made. I made X. I made $55,000 this year. I can't pay your taxes. And they keep getting more and more threatening, or just taxing you at that rate. And so you're paying tons of money in taxes, and you're getting like threatening letters. And then in order to fix it, you just call in, and all you get is an AI bot. You're not fixing that mess. You're not fixing that mess, man. Like it's never going to happen, man. So I think it's a bad idea. The other people think it's a bad idea, but the Liberals love bad ideas, and they rush forward with it, as bad an idea as they can rush forward with. National Post is reporting Liberals urged to cut old age security spending in upcoming budget, because, nobody's going to vote for the budget because it's so expensive. And apparently the deficit is back up to $100 million. But that's just the rumor. I think maybe art of the deal. But in this budget, the spending is increased even over Justin Trudeau, that got, Chrystia Freeland to quit. And so people are saying, oh, hold on, we got to trim this budget. Nobody's, as Bradshaw is making the case here, nobody's saying, hold on, we got to cut costs from the migrants. No. It's the old folks who get costs cut. Really? Yeah, that's what they're going to do. So Bradshaw says Liberals urge to cut old age security spending, but not the refugee spending or the consultant spending or the foreign affairs spending, Mary Simon spending, or Mel Jolie's booze budget spending, $50,000 a month, right? So pretty wild stuff. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. Canada is not in responsible hands, that's for sure. Gary says, and not Gana Sangri, Gary L. says Liberals' $50 billion EV strategy is imploding. Auto plants are moving south. Carney still can't get a trade deal with Trump. Our deficit is soaring, but the biggest issue for Canada's national newspaper is that Pierre Poilievre says Justin Trudeau must be held accountable for SNC Lavalin. SNC Lavalin? Sorry, what year is it? Are you kidding? Robert Fife says Pierre Poilievre charges ahead recklessly. Oh yeah, that's so reckless. 5 years later, it seems like a fake scandal. As yesterday's title was alluding to, it seems like a fake scandal. It seems like a scandal to distract. Here's Melissa, and she says, holy cow, Doug Ford is threatening to sue General Motors after they announced ending production of electric delivery vans at their plant in Ontario. So here's Doug Ford being angry.
This is the reason.
Was this a bad bet, do you think, on Ontario's part to put money into this General Motors facility? And how do you get that money back?
If they breach a contract, we're going to sue them. Simple as that. And he knows that. They breached a contract, and we're going to make sure that we get another vehicle in that area.
They want to open up another line, get all those jobs back. I don't know. Is it going to be an electric vehicle? I would say not, because nobody's buying them. Ross is responding to Mel Jolie. Mel Jolie says, here's my declaration on General Motors in Ingersoll, Ontario. Our thoughts are with the workers affected by the news that GM is not resuming operations on the Bright Drop mandate in Ingersoll. This morning, I spoke to the CEO of GM Canada, the head of Unifor, Premier Ford, and Ontario Minister Vic Fedeli. First, we've confirmed that the affected workers have access to 6 months financial support. Second, we are immediately convening a response group on GM dynamics to defend these jobs and workers. Our auto workers deserve nothing less. So again, I don't know that them riding in with all of this, I don't know that it's going to save it, because they're not actually going to come in and change anything structurally. Yesterday, I was talking about being appealing to businesses and having policies that make businesses want to come and work in your country. And Canada has expensive electricity, expensive labor, expensive unions, expensive material, expensive gas, high taxes everywhere. Did I say high taxes? Income taxes, gas taxes, input taxes, right? Material taxes. You're geographically far away from the United States where you're supplying. So if you could move into the United States and be geographically closer with less gas taxes, less payroll taxes, less costs overall, how is Ontario or Canada attractive to come and build? Oh, we'll give you billions of dollars. Okay, well, still nobody's buying our damn things that we had to build in order to unlock those billions of dollars. So how about go fuck yourself? Excuse my French, right? Like, I don't think so. It just doesn't work. Oh, come, we're going to sue you if you don't build these cars that nobody wants, right? We want to just we want them in big car graveyards, just like China. That's what Mel Jolie wants. Here's some government money from the taxpayer. Just build the damn cars and make pretend that these people are doing productive work. I don't want that. I don't want that. These people are idiots, and they're leading us down a very dangerous path. Laurie Goldstein is responding to dying himself. He says, dying EV market running on subsidies. Because nobody wants the damn cars. Recent production cuts and delays by the major automakers show Canada's fledgling, heavily subsidized EV market is heading for the scrap heap. So why are we throwing good money after bad? And he says, how many more examples do the feds, Ontario and Quebec need to finally acknowledge that massively subsidizing cars that people don't want to buy was a blunder of historic proportions? Not yet. Not yet, says Mel Jolie. We want to give them more money. Wait, what? Mel Jolie says there's even more taxpayer money for the departing auto companies, and this is why we have strategic fund to help the companies. When it comes to General Motors, they decided to let go of their Bright Drop, which was an EV vehicle that was not going well commercially. It was a delivery van. They couldn't sell fleets of delivery vans. Like, Liberals were so eager to throw money at EV in Canada, they didn't bother to research demand. Nope, they are economically illiterate, but also business illiterate. So they'll just, they think, oh yeah, if we build all these cars, somebody will buy them. And people looked at the cars, looked at the price, looked at everything and said, nope, sorry, nope. Lion Advocacy is responding to Global News. Global News says General Motors says it's ending production of its Bright Drop electric vehicle. And Lion Advocacy says subsidies don't work, incentives didn't work, propaganda didn't work, climate fear-mongering didn't work. That leaves only one thing, EV coercion. COVID was the testing ground. So yeah, you'll do it because we tell you to do it, and that's fundamentally it. CBC Watcher says, despite almost doubling Indigenous Services Canada spending programs over the last 5 years, moving on from the General Motors thing, we found unsatisfactory progress on more than half of the recommendations to address the long-standing issues. So this woman talks about how there have been boil water advisories since Justin Trudeau took over. And he promised to fix it all by 2020. No more boil water advisories, no nothing. He said, we'll fix it. We'll fix it fast. We'll fix it by 2018 probably. And he didn't do that. And so this woman is telling stories about how ineffective. She says, 20 years after my office first identified concerns with drinking water quality in First Nations communities, 35 long-term advisories remain in effect, including 9 that have been in place for a decade or longer. A decade is 2015, right? We just passed the decade anniversary of Justin Trudeau's government, and no action whatsoever, right? Lies upon lies. Here is Garnet Genius. He says, watch this economics professor calmly shut down a Liberal MP on the temporary foreign workers program. He says, you would collapse our economy by shutting down the temporary foreign workers program. And the Economist witness says, no, it would help the economy, not shut it down. Here we go.
What alternative would you propose to the temporary foreign workers program? Or would you sacrifice the economy for ideological reasons, sir?
Well, I certainly wouldn't sacrifice the economy for ideological reasons, but I would say that in the absence of a temporary foreign worker program, I would expect, as I've said already, firms would re-advertise at a higher wage rate, and they might attract Canadian citizens or landed immigrants to the jobs, or they might invest in new technology. I mean, the Nobel Prize in economics was awarded last week, I think, and Peter Howitt, esteemed professor at Brown University, who taught at Western University for many years. I mean, their theories were about creative destruction, that new companies come in and they replace old companies. But there are papers in that literature that basically say that if you protect companies that rely on low-wage workers, they will invest less in innovation and new technology, and you'll short-circuit that growth. So these are the concerns I have. The impact for younger, low-wage workers in Canada, Canadian citizens, and landed immigrants, and what are the implications for economic growth for the country?
Stagnant. The economic growth of the country is being strangled, held underwater. Shocking, says Dane Lloyd. Liberals give $200,000 taxpayer money to discredited organization to help creating ethical framework for research on far-right organizing in Canada. This is the same organization that falsely claimed that an anti-Semitic flyer circulated at convoy protests. Why do taxpayers need to pay $200,000 to teach left-wing hacks to be ethical? And it's the Canadian Anti-Hate Network getting $200,000. And Greg says, completely insane that the Canadian government is still pumping money into anti-hate. There's a win here in that they've fully conceded that anti-hate has nothing to do with stopping hate and everything to do with persecuting right-wingers and people the regime doesn't like. Yep. Hi, everybody. Happy me. John says he's an MP. He says, hidden in the price of your groceries are liberal food taxes you never see on your receipt. One of these is the food packaging tax, which the government's own analysis says will cost Canadians $1.3 billion by 2032. The plastics ban and front of packing labels cost the industry $14 billion. Yet the Liberals voted against scrapping these hidden taxes. So all of these bullshit things go on to the price of food. So like your can of soup or your pudding, they've upped the pudding. The pudding used to be like $1, right? $1.10, $1.20 or something like that. Now it's $2. So the pudding is actually in a paper container with a paper bag that is containing the pudding in it. And so they don't have to do anything, but now they have to do like carbon labels on your packaging and like all sorts of stuff. And if previously it was packaged in plastic, they have to do R&D to figure out what else they can package the food in so that it doesn't go bad, and then package it in that, and that might cost more. And so those costs are passed on to consumers, and that's all back to bad policy. Okay, that's all back to the bad policy there. And so, like, not great, right? And they're not going to scrap it because they're a-holes. Juno News says Canadians felt the pinch at the grocery store last month. Yep, as food prices continue to climb, contributing to a 2.4% annual increase in the consumer price index for September. We can fix these problems. The only reason they're problems is because the bad policy persists. If the policy is removed, these problems would not be problems anymore. It would be smooth sailing, and we'd focus on other things we'd focus on other things. I'm sure that, like crime or something like that. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to the stream. If you want the full show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. Unfortunately, my live stream dreams of having the show for members being live streamed for the whole show have been dashed. And the reason is because I'm using Rumble Studio, and Rumble Studio, I can't end the Rumble stream. I have to keep the Rumble and local stream going, and I can't do it just into the members stream. And so I realized that yesterday when I was trying to do it, and it didn't work anyway. So like the WP stream that I had the stream didn't start. And so thanks, Max, for letting me know. So kind of frustrating. Back to the drawing board. I'm looking for other providers. I don't know that I can replace Rumble Studio because it has Restream.io does the same thing for like $100 a month, but Rumble Studio is free. So I can't leave it without replacing it at a cost to me. And so that's unfortunate. So I don't know what options are out there. I'm going to investigate, but at this point in time, I'm kind of cooked. So if you want the full show, head over to canadapoly.com. It'll be posted in the next hour or so because I have to finish doing the show and then I'll post it.